Welcome, everyone. I am so honored and thrilled to be kicking off this amazing event today. And thank you so much to the organizers for inviting me. My name is Leah PICA. I am a data storytelling advocate. You can find me at any of the channels, not the first one this morning, unfortunately, but definitely the others. And I thought it was a great idea to share a fun fact. Mine is that I was on 2 national game shows and I actually lost both of them, and I'm still a little sore about it. But if everyone has some great feedback and commentary, I'd love to actually share which one those are throughout the session. So I'm going to give a little bit of reason to stay and also a little bit of anticipation. So I'm actually really excited to be at kicking off a day around an analytics tool that everyone knows here and loves. And the thing is, I think this is a great way to start the day because this session isn't going to be around the technical know-how, the tips, the tricks, the hacks for getting information into and out of GA. This session is about what are you going to do with all of that juicy goodness once you get it out, because it actually really doesn't matter what tool you're getting it out of. The real juice behind working as a data practitioner for me is what you actually do in communicating that information to inspire action. And for me, there's a really important skill, and it isn't built into any of the tools that I have seen to this date. And I'm going to give you an idea of what that is by asking you all a question, and feel free. I'm hoping I can see folks' answers in the chat, but if not, people can tell me vocally. I would love to know for you, what makes a great story? So try to think of like 2 to 3 word phrases of, like, I'll give you an example. So interesting and relatable characters is one. So what are the elements that make you think of a really great story? The memorable stories, the one that stayed with you, the ones that changed you, transformed you, moved you. What are the common elements that you can pick out? Okay, great. Oh, it's good to see you on chat. Okay. Engaging for the public, has a twist. Learnings I got, great. What else? I know there's more. So dramatic tension, great. The hero's journey. Someone's already seen this chat, this talk. What else? Impact, plot, climax, visuals. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna wait for a couple more. I know there's more in there. Think of it, whether it's Breaking Bad or Shawshank Redemption or SpongeBob, whatever it is that floats your boat. What are those common elements? Appeal to emotions, hero and obstacles. Data, well, that's interesting. Data's not been in most of the stories that I've seen, but definitely in business. Happy ending, yes, great. Self-recognition. Failures, oh, good one. Humor, excellent. These are great. These are great, yes. So I'm already starting to see some of the most common elements that we find in the great stories that move us, transform us, and leave us different than they found us, right? Oh, these are great. Keep it coming. So yeah, the ones that come to me, and you've all mentioned these, are interesting characters, a compelling plot, intriguing challenges, a surprising turn of events or a twist, an exciting climax, and a satisfying resolution. Not even necessarily a happy ending, but a satisfying one, right? Because we see stories with all kinds of not happy endings, right? Now I want you to take a moment, and with all of those elements in mind, I want you to think about what this makes you think of right now. What are the things that come to mind? Emotions, impressions. What does this do for you right now, especially in context to what you just saw? And I love that one, Perna. Think different. Love that one. Anxiety. Yeah. Confusing. Okay, what else? Unless those are just the only 2. Headache, chaos, data. Yes. Actually, that's a really good point. Milojan, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Data, that's correct. What you are seeing here is data. Good fun. Seeing too many of these. What should I do with all of this? Right. Yes, these are the exact reactions I get in contrast to that first question every time I show this slide. And overwhelming. Thank you, Camilla. So are these things that we normally feel when we're watching a really well-told story? Maybe we're feeling those emotions intentionally, like anxiety and overwhelm, but in an entertaining way, in a productive way, not in the way that I'm assuming you feel. And what that signifies to me is that this is not a story. It's a lot of things, but that's not what it is. What about this one? Okay, this one is so cool, right? It's got lots of charts and stoplights and lots of insights, right? Thoughts, yes? No. When we look at the common elements that we just identified of great stories, this does not meet the criteria. It doesn't pass the test. Clutter, yes, Malika, exactly. And these are not ways that Hollywood normally tell you a story that would change you and move you and transform you and leave you different, leave you thinking differently. But unfortunately, this is the way that we learned, kind of by accident, how to present our data stories to an executive audience who's a group of human beings who are attuned to seeing stories and information in a certain way, but we never got the skills for exactly how to do that. And Alan, thanks for mentioning that. That's actually something I'd love to speak to later, so remind me. You know, this problem came really clear to me a few years ago when over and over, as a data practitioner and analyst myself, I would get a call from stakeholders asking me, hey, can you present some performance results? Can you take all that great data out of Google and just give me everything? Can you give me all the numbers? I don't know if anyone can relate to that request. And then you're working so hard and then you distill all these insights and then suddenly you're in that room and you're looking around and uh-oh, no one's paying attention. People are falling asleep. They're looking confused. This is not a good thing. Hollywood would die if that's what happened every single time someone came to a movie or a TV show. And that was the reaction. And what this points to, for me, is a global affliction that has been affecting and plaguing our meeting conference rooms for decades. And I call it presentation zombification, right? So anyone ever feel like their conference room has just turned into a set for The Walking Dead, where these people that went in awake and lucid and with it come out half asleep and bored and drooling and confused and asking really challenging and annoying questions? I don't know if that resonates for you, but that was my experience. And that is what I wanted to end with this mission. And I'll tell you that if you think that this is a small problem, it's not. This global issue is very expensive for organizations. A study done a few years ago, we like data, right? So a study done a few years ago by doodle.com found that over 541,000, billion dollars is estimated to be wasted annually during ineffective business meetings and presentations in just 2 countries that they were able to measure, just the US and the UK. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to extrapolate that out to say what is going on in the world. But this isn't just expensive for organizations. This is emotionally taxing and expensive for us, the practitioners. We work so hard and we go in there and we're like, what is going on? Why isn't this going right? And what I think this comes down to is gaining a different perspective and understanding of this phrase, data storytelling. It's the trendiest hot word of the day. But what I am finding is that a lot of times we are missing the real essence of what data storytelling is. We've got the data part down, and that's what this whole event today is about. But it's the story part that we really need to nail. I have found that a well-told data story accomplishes 4 really important things. The first is to answer the burning questions of our stakeholders, to inform the business decisions that they hold most important, maybe to inspire new ideas and new conversations, but most importantly, to galvanize your audience into taking action. And that's why the real crux of this entire talk today is about numbers versus insights. Your numbers, those digits that come out of your platforms and sit in your Excel sheets, yes, they create data, but it is your stories about those numbers that will create the insight and the action that you're hoping for. Now, I want to turn this back to you before I continue. I would love to hear in this chat, fire it up right now. What is the biggest struggle that you are facing when you present your insights to your stakeholder audiences? What's the biggest annoying thing that the monkey on your back that you wish you could just wave a magic wand and make it better, make it go away, make it work? Okay, so want to hear about that in the chat right now. Okay, lack of general knowledge about data. Okay, so data literacy, sure. What else? Digital maturity, understanding, indifference. Oh, that's a good one. Preempting questions, being too granular, knowing that actions will not be implemented. That is so hard, Richard, for sure. Getting the right data from the client, too many data sources. Okay, consistency, got it. So a lot of the things that you're picking out, yeah, not sounding technical, but delivering the key message. A lot of the things that you're expressing are around the data itself and the hygiene and stuff. But getting indifference, I want us to focus on that. Client not understanding data when I explain, converting data to insights. Those are the ones that we're going to talk about today. Now, there's a lot of different people talking about this. There's a million books written about this. And I don't know about you, but when I started my journey 10 years ago, I got really overwhelmed by all of the different aspirational and theoretical and conceptual opinions about what data storytelling is and what it means and how to do it. But I wanted something concrete. So because I'm a super type A personality, I decided to create my own, and I call it the PICA Protocol. And it is your prescription for healthy, actionable data stories that you can use every single time to get from a little seed of a question or insight all the way through to a visual sequenced slides. All right. So going from dashboards to insights, there's that dashboard again. So we'll talk about that. Now, just so you know, if you collect, analyze, and present data, you're in the right place. This session is definitely for you. However, if you are on the receiving and consuming and making decisioning with data, this session is also for you because someone mentioned data literacy is a real thing. It's a real thing that's necessary for this process to work all around. So no matter what, you're in the right place. All right, we're going to dive in with the first letter, which is P for purpose. Okay, so it's my hope that every single piece of information you put in your data presentations and your everything, every chart, every insight has a purpose to it, and that we've examined that purpose. You know, when we gather around this conference room, there are a lot of different needs and wants and concerns that we're bringing to that table. She might be thinking, how can we improve our email campaign performance? I feel like we're slipping somewhere. She might be thinking, are we going to hit our regional sales quota this quarter? I feel like we're going to miss it. He's like, I know we are leaving money on the table somewhere. I want to know where that is. And I think there's a question of whether this is getting recorded, Will. So I believe it is, but I don't want to misspeak. So I'll let Will answer that. But yeah, so they're all thinking different things. And then the guy on the end over here is like, what am I doing here? What is this? What is this about? Hello. And I feel like we've probably all felt like that guy in meetings. What is this? But what we definitely want to prevent is anyone feeling like that when we are presenting. And the key to that is establishing a purpose for everything that we are talking about. And that's why it's my belief that every great data story begins with a clear question or series of questions, not just dumping stuff in slide after slide and going, oh, I think this makes sense. But like, let's get down, let's get philosophical. We'll be like, dude, why do you exist? Okay. Do you exist because someone asked for you and they think you're important, but you're not actually going to inform anything? Or are you a vital part of the decision-making process? Are you a vital part of this story? So you have to ask that every single time before you start dropping things in. What need are you meeting? So we are presenting to humans. I know sometimes they seem like they're kind of like robots, but they're actually humans. They are going home. They are watching movies, reading stories to their kids. They are human beings and they have needs and desires. You know, maybe they need to meet their bonus criteria. Like, how are they going to meet their bonus criteria for the quarter? What is the big project that they'd love to succeed at? What's their big, hairy goal? And how can your data support that? You know, or what problem are you solving? Is there a big monkey on their back that they can't seem to get off? Or is there a big problem happening with a website? Or are there problems happening with customers? What is the problem that your data can help overcome for them? What decision are you informing? What decisions are at hand? And how does your data link up to that? And then this is the question I love so much. How are you making my stakeholders' lives better? Because what I will tell you about your stakeholders is this: they are busy, they are overwhelmed, and they have a finite set of resources of personnel, of time, of attention, and of money. And the thing that you have to remember is that when you are making a strategic recommendation using your insights, you are competing for the rest of everything that exists on their plate. So presenting insights for me is a sales process. You are selling your insights and your recommendations. So when you begin to learn how to translate your data into the needs and desires of your stakeholders, that's when you begin to win. And if you really get down and start by saying, well, how am I going to make my customers' lives better? It's my belief that happy customers lead to healthy companies. So when you take what's ultimately best for the customer, but translate it into what the stakeholder needs to be successful at that time, to speak to their success metrics, then you really start to win. So that's where we really have to begin with this process before we start pulling data and charting and visiting and all that stuff. Now, when we start to have an answer to this question, we get to do a vital part of this process, which is to learn to choose the most effective visualization for our message and for our data. So how do we do that? Well, we start to have a conversation using some of those questions. If we can't have the conversation on our own, I invite you to do this thing that a lot of us are afraid to do, which is actually have the conversation with our stakeholder. Don't worry, they won't bite, and they might actually feel great that you're really invested in understanding what their needs are. And as that conversation unfolds, what you're going to want to do is to look for the keywords in the question. Word on the street, y'all are into keywords. So you're going to start looking for keywords in what they are saying to point you to the right type of visualization. So here's how that conversation might go. Let's say I'm with that stakeholder and she wants performance results, whatever that means. So I go back and I say, well, tell me more about what you mean by that. What does performance mean? And she might be, maybe she's new to the account, or the role. And she's like, well, we want to know how our marketing channels are performing. Okay, so we're talking about marketing channels. Great. Well, what does that mean to you? Can you tell me more? She might say, well, looking at how well they convert, that might be a good place to start. Aha, we sell things. We like to convert people to customers. Oh, okay. Well, what kind of campaign channels generate the highest number of conversions? Okay, now we've got something. I've highlighted two of these phrases in this sentence because these are our keywords. So campaign channels is a list of categories that we can compare to each other and contrast using a particular measure or metric. Great. Oh, and then here we are, highest conversions. This is also a keyword because it's a measure or metric that we can use to compare a list of categories to each other. Oh my gosh, they're like peanut butter and jelly, or almond butter, which I prefer. But now at least we're getting somewhere. Now I want to just have a quick caveat. I'm not looking to win any awards with innovation on this analytics scenario. This is actually designed to be incredibly simple so that you can follow along the model, the thinking process of this methodology. This is definitely not about what is the right analytics choice to make here. So I just want to cover off on that. So here we have our answer. We're looking for a comparison of campaign marketing channels by conversion volume. What incredibly innovative and groundbreaking and mind-blowing visualization could I possibly come up with to totally wow them? Are you ready? A horizontal categorical bar chart. I know it's not the most exciting choice, but here's the thing. One of the things that we don't get about data storytelling often is that we think what matters is how fancy or interesting or novel our visualizations are. That's not how it works. A study done by Duarte, the largest presentation consultancy in the world, found that only 3 visualizations show up the most in executive data presentations because those are the ones that stakeholders understand. Yes, Dragos, thank you so, it's great to see you. It's so important what he just said. It's about clarity, not cleverness. The Donald Miller, the head of Story Brand, that's his favorite tagline. So bar charts are simple, they're easy to understand, there's no learning curve, and that's why they are great for expressing high-level aggregate information, especially at the beginning of a data story. So here's how that might look. We start with a comparison of channels, okay, just on the left here, and the bars are encoding our conversion volume. So simple. We go horizontal because vertically oriented charts with bars tend to indicate a passage of time. So that might cause a moment of reprocessing for your audience. And also if they have irregular labels like here, that can make the chart put them on a diagonal, which creates a readability issue. And what we don't want to do for our audience, we don't want to add work to their mental plate. Seconds, milliseconds count when we're presenting to people. Our attention is so short. So how can we put less work for them? Now, there is one more step that I could take here from here that will instantly help my audience comprehend this better. It's simple, but it gets lost often. And that is to sort by priority. Sorting allows a person to instantly understand how this chart is meant to be read, which is what's the most or least important part of the chart. What's the hierarchy here? So right away, we're starting to see an observation emerge from our data. We're starting to see that paid and organic search are the channels that create the most conversions. Great, we've made a simple choice that's already starting to answer the question. Now, there's a way to go way deep on chart choosing, but the point of what I'm trying to say here is that your visualization tool does not know what your best chart choice is. I've looked, and to this day, I have not found a tool that will make the best guess for you. Yes, there are definitely algorithms that will narrow it down to like 5, but ultimately, that is a judgment call that you have to make as a practitioner of data communication. And this means learning about different chart types and when are the best times to use them. And luckily at the end, I have a resource to get you started with that. Jacques, yes, bars and lines cover most of the needs in regular stakeholder executive presentations. Absolutely. I appreciate that very much, Jacques. Actually, the third one they found was Pi, and I wish I could go deep into Pi. For this, we don't have time, but there's a reason for that too. And that'd be a great conversation to start in the Q&A if someone wants to ask. Okay, next letter in the methodology is I for insight. Oh, this is one of our other favorite words that we love to throw around a lot in our space. And I often wonder, do we know what that really means? Because time and time again, my audience would say to me, but what were the insights? And I thought, oh gosh, I guess I missed the boat on something. So I decided to look into, well, what does that actually mean? So my favorite definition of insight is the capacity to gain a new, accurate, and deep intuitive understanding of a person or thing. Okay, so look at some of those keywords there. Accurate, deep, intuitive, right? But perhaps the more important word is new. There's this light bulb eureka moment that we're seeking to create for our audience. And oftentimes people are like, well, everything's the same, nothing new. So that's not actually an insight. An insight is that twist, that thing that we didn't know before. Yes, exactly. You guys are connecting. We want information, we want knowledge, we want wisdom, right? Absolutely. So here, one of the biggest missing pieces, and when I'm asked over and over, what's the missing piece from most data stories and presentations? And I'm like, well, the thing missing from your story is a story. And I say that tongue in cheek because what I actually mean by that, story means a lot of things. But there's a specific mechanic in storytelling that I'm speaking to, which is called the narrative arc. Now, someone mentioned the hero's journey already. And yes, Swampville insight for sure. There is a technique in the hero's journey, which is the narrative arc is sort of like the Matrix. So I'm going to use this story to describe it. The matrix is invisible and it's all around us, right? But it's this thing that organizes all of the information for us, and it creates a sort of scaffolding or organizational pod, shelving, whatever. But once you actually see it, you'll understand that this is the foundation for story. And it's the biggest thing that I find is we were never taught going into data storytelling. So I'll try to go through this quickly because there's a lot here. But let's say we start off our story here. Here is our character. In this case, our character is the customer in our story, our stakeholders, us, whatever. And exposition is this stage where we're setting the stage, we're walking along, and this is our life, and this is the current time period, and this is what's happening, and we're painting a backdrop. But if he kept walking along like that, nothing would happen. There would be no story. So something has to happen in order for there to be a story. So something does happen. There's some kind of thing. There's a event that happened in the data. Maybe we didn't expect it. And this stage is called rising action. It's when the tension starts to rise because something has happened that has created a conflict for our character. A conflict is a problem, something standing in the way of something they want, or it's an opportunity. It's something they want, but there's a conflict because there's an obstacle in the way of getting what they want. So a conflict is not necessarily bad. It just means that there's something in the way between where that character wants to go and where they are right now. Now, things keep happening, and we start to understand, oh gosh, what's at the top here? It's the climax. It's the tension is maxed out and we don't know what's going to happen from here. How could it get worse? And the most important thing, what's at stake if we do nothing? What will we lose if we stay in that high tension point? So that's critical, but you can't leave your audience there or else they're going to have a heart attack. So we start to bring the tension down with a phase called falling action. This is your recommendations and your plan of strategies. Never fear, the plan is here. And this is how we're going to overcome our challenges. And then when we agree on that plan and we move forward, we arrive at a resolution. We are victorious, we won. Or maybe we weren't victorious, maybe it didn't work, but we are wiser and we have more knowledge than we had before, and we know how to move forward. So here's the arc in full. And I want you to notice that where we ended up is different than where we were in the exposition. And that's the critical piece of storytelling, is that we end up in a different place. We leave our audience in a different, wiser place than they were before. Okay. So that's the essence of data story, the story, and how it can impact in your data. Okay, so now how do you actually tell this in a real world scenario? So I'd love to show you something called the Anatomy of a Persuasive Data Visualization. I got this from a great book called Good Charts by Scott Baronato, my friend. So where do we put these insights? Well, this is a visual field, and this is sort of a blueprint for how you can look at your field. Our title is here, it's about 12%. Our subtitle's there, it's about 8%. We have a visualization field, which is about 3/4 of that, and it's data, annotations, callouts, and then we always want to source our data to be verifiable. But I want us to focus on this title area right now. That is the most important visual real estate on your slide or page or whatever you're working with. Okay, it's the first place that our eyes look, especially in a Western culture, and then we consume the field in a Z pattern, which is why most websites are constructed in a Z pattern as well. But we don't often think about that sort of usability of our slides. What most of us do, myself included, is use that space to make a declaration about what the chart on the slide is. But instead, we can use that space more productively to advance the narrative forward to tell the story with an observation of what the chart actually means. Let's not make our audience do that work. We're here to tell the story. So we can take that out, kind of demote it into a subtitle, and instead use that vital space to communicate an observation that pushes the story forward. This is what's called an observational McKinsey title. That's how I've heard it called. And what it helps guarantee is that no matter how you have interpreted or how your audience have interpreted the slide, the message that you are trying to convey comes across crystal clear, and it's not up for necessary interpretation and question marks. So that's a core piece of how to present your insight and move that story forward. So that's one of my favorite tools. It's a total game changer for my students. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it and, whether it works for you. All right, moving along to the third step. We have C for context. This is actually my favorite step in the process because this is where things get fun. This is where we get to put on like our detective hats and we get to go deeper into the data because we don't want to take the very first insights that jump out at us at face value. We want to ask ourselves, do I have all the information at my disposal to tell a complete picture? Or am I showing all of the information needed to make a sound and informed decision here? Or am I missing pieces that might not lead my stakeholders down the best path? Now, there's a few visual tools that you can use to create context. And this is actually one of the ways that you can create a twist in your data to create that suspense and surprise. They are performance targets and benchmarks, which always help create a sense of competitiveness with, a gamification, but you should always be shooting towards something. Prior time period comparison. What is this performance mean in the context of yesterday, last week, last month, last year? Can that shed light? Segmentation, which is really fun. How many slices and different angles can we look at the prism of our data and find the deeper nuggets? So maybe we start the story at a higher aggregate level, but we go deeper into the deeper layers and find those bigger nuggets there. And then finally, in this example, additional measures. What if there are other bits of information that can help flesh out the story? So in this case, if I'm an analyst, I might be asking myself, well, volume of conversions is great, but that's not the whole story. I'd want to know, well, how does conversion rate affect our story? Because we might want to make decisions using that as well. So this is where we can do something great by adding a second measure with one of my favorite storytelling techniques, which is called a side-by-side chart. So notice with this chart, I've kind of left this big open space, which I actually don't mind. I don't mind white space on slides. It's actually something that's very healthy for our brains instead of filling every pixel up. But what I've done here is I've left a space open because I'm going to complete my story. Here, I'm going to add in a duplicated chart that has the categories in the same exact order, but instead displays conversion rate for each of those channels. And then I've just removed that left axis. Super easy to do in PowerPoint. Now the story gets more interesting. Yes, even though paid search has the highest volume, it has a way lower efficiency than some of our other channels. And in looking at that, now we kind of have to look at email. here we are, it's third on the list in volume, but it's way higher. It's more than twice as high in conversion rates as the others. That might make for a more interesting story. So I want you to notice that in my McKinsey title, I wrote out an initial observation, but now I've added in that little arrow. Okay, what is that arrow pointed to right now? That ... What does that ... mean in the context of data storytelling? And storytelling in general, actually. What does the ... mean? It's called an ellipsis. Margot, it can mean but. Yep, it can, for sure. There is more, a but. Yep. Yeah, so for me, it's to be continued. That's what the 3 dots mean to me, right? So to be continued are 3 of the most powerful words in storytelling. It's what gets people's butts back into movie theaters for an Avengers Endgame, and like the ends of Game of Thrones and the next chapters and things like that. So that's how we can create a story. And what that does is called opening a story loop, where we open a loop, but we have to complete it. So we add that ellipsis right there. But then email, we finish the thought by saying email is our most efficient converting channel. And we complete that story with an ellipsis in the beginning, and we bring that in. And that can inspire a much more interesting, deeper conversation. So there are lots of ways to go deeper with context. You can ask, does performance vary by region? Does looking at mobile platforms shed more light? What tests were associated with each channel at this time? What other sources of data can we explore? Okay, so go deeper, go a deeper layer. Don't get caught in the analysis paralysis rabbit hole that I know all too well. But when you feel like you have a complete enough story to make a solid decision for your stakeholders, that's when you know you're good. Okay. All right. So we've hit the last letter in our methodology, and boy, this one is a doozy. It's A for aesthetics. So for me, aesthetics is not about making charts look pretty and flashy and exciting, and I've had all those requests made of me, but it's about using principles of visual cues that allow for the efficient and accurate interpretation of data. Okay. So there's 2 main steps to this process. First is cutting the clutter, which someone mentioned before, right? How can we pull a Marie Kondo on our slides, right? Become minimalists. And then intentional emphasis. How can we draw attention to the things that matter most in the data? And I think by now you're understanding that this slide did not get the memo for either the clutter or intentional emphasis. There's so much going on, and I don't know where to look. And what this does is it creates something called cognitive load. I don't know if there are any psychology enthusiasts in here, majors, but cognitive load is the total amount of mental effort being used in the working memory. And the way to think of your working memory, we have these different stages of memory. And the way to think of your working memory is sort of like this temporary holding pattern, where someone's juggling a lot of balls. This is your audience member, right? And you're juggling, well, maybe they're oranges. And you're juggling these oranges, and you're throwing things at them, and you're throwing more things. And each of those things are balls or oranges, more oranges, and they're trying to keep it up. And the way the working memory works is it has a finite capacity. The more visual balls you throw at their brain, the more likely it will drop all of them. And when it drops, that looks like multitasking, tuning out, asking confused questions, falling asleep. That is their attention getting overwhelmed or bored. Okay, so but that's what we don't want to do. So we're going to do something I absolutely love to do every day, because I'm kind of a closet hippie. We're going to do a detox. We're going to get all the stuff out that we don't need and just leave the stuff that we do. Now, some of you may be wondering about my aesthetic choices on the charts you've been seeing, and those were actually intentional. But this is actually a template you can, a format that you can find by default in certain tools. And we don't want to do design by default. Yes, Dragos, we'll get to that in a second. So with just a few simple steps, it takes such little time. we already can clean up so many things that prevent us from seeing the information quickly and easily. So I removed the background, the border, the legend, the grid lines, the axis. I've increased the width between each bar. The bar gap, the direct data labeling, improve the font choices for better readability. And I'm going to give you a resource again, if you get me on LinkedIn, that'll help you take you through this step by step. But yes, you guys are hitting on something important. We have a whole bunch of random colors here. Ugh, and that's actually, again, a default setting, but you only want to use one color for every measure that you are using. You already have the length of the bar to explain the value. But now what we're going to do here is going to look weird for a second because people are like, what just happened? But just go with it. We're actually going to reduce both colors, both chart colors, to emotionally neutral grays, so that the information gets set to a backdrop. Right now, it's not triggering any feelings in you necessarily, which is what I want. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to use a standout color like this nice sharp blue to emphasize your data story, okay? Your data story is what matters, right? What you feel is important and what your recommendations are going to be based on. Notice how your attention, boom, jumps right to that. Now I take it a step further and I match the corresponding title and label text in there with the color in my chart, which creates this beautiful connective tissue between your chart and your observation, because that's what your audience will do. They'll look at your observation and they'll want to corroborate it right away in your chart, okay? Cannot explain how important color is as a storytelling tool. And now this is one of the simplest ones I can give you. So please don't let your data viz tool decide what matters to your decision makers. Don't do it by default. Make the conscious choice on your own and make sure nothing is left to chance. Okay, so if we have time, I'd like to actually show how this works all together now. So I'm going to show you how I would sequence the slides in a storytelling format using the arc and the context and the visuals and everything you just saw. So we might start off by saying, okay, you asked us to look at which marketing channels are best performing at generating conversions. So here we are, we found that paid search has generated the majority of our conversion volume. However, when we dug a little deeper, we wanted to find out, is this where we should end the story? So we dug a little deeper and we decided to bring in conversion rate. And we found something different. We found that email is actually our most efficiently converting channel at 32%. Ooh, what an interesting twist. So what are our theories on why this happened? How can we explain that? Well, we found two potential conflicts that are happening right now. First, our paid search conversion rate declined by 12% in Q3. This was something we didn't expect, so we need to investigate. Next, our email click to open rate is well above our target, but open rate is falling below. So these are two important things we have to understand. Now, here's what's at stake. Okay, here's the climax. We've calculated and crunched, and we found that if we do nothing, we could be leaving an additional 10% conversion volume on the table. When we take assumptions of our lost conversions in 3 months in order value and whatever calculations you have, we've estimated we could lose this much. But not to fear, we have a plan to turn things around. First, we're going to review the least efficient areas of paid search to identify where we can improve. We're going to do this with the BI team in 3 weeks. Boom. Very clear, crisp plan. We're going to further analyze our email campaigns for the last 6 months to find our best subject lines. We're going to do this with marketing in 2 weeks. And then finally, we are still seeking to upgrade that email platform. So we'd really love to get that sign off in order to do that. Again, if we do nothing, this is what we could be leaving on the table. And we don't want to do that. Boom. Do you see how this is very different than that first slide that you saw with all the stuff on it? This carried you through an emotional journey with me, leading you to a plan so that hopefully by the time we get to that plan, you're almost a yes. That's the real beauty in data storytelling. So just to quickly recap, First, check in with what is the purpose with why you're including this information. Does it matter? What is the insight behind it? What are the key observations? Does it tell a story? Okay. What's the context? Are you leaving the story at face value? Are you going deep enough? And how can you flesh that out and find an interesting twist? And then how are you designing your charts in order to communicate, to be simple, and to emphasize? So yeah, let's connect. Here's a couple ways to keep in touch. Go over to LinkedIn, find me, and send a connection invite, but include a note that you're from this talk, say GA4 or forward, and request a handout, and we'll get that over to you today. And then please be sure to fill out the event survey. We definitely want to know how this resonated for you, how it worked for you. And I'll leave you with a little bit of wisdom by the late and great Aldous Huxley, which is, facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. Well, they don't, but whether or not that's true, I think getting ignored sucks. And I'm hoping that this session today gave you just a few pieces of information, just a few ways that you and your insights will stop getting ignored, put aside, and forgotten, because they deserve to be heard and seen, and you deserve to create immense action from all that great stuff that you're getting out of GA4 today. And with that, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for having me today. I think if there is time for questions, I'm happy to take them. Viz responsibly, my friends, and namaste.
I think we've only got probably time for maybe sort of 2 questions.
Okay, great. Thank you all.
I'm just in fact, I'm going to ask one question, and then we could raise one person, and if they raise a hand, and put them on the stage. So Leah, how do I get sort of stakeholders to care? So
basically what you just saw, if you find that narrative arc in your data, if you understand what the challenges are that they are working with, what are the goals they have, what are the challenges the customers are experiencing, and you're able to trigger their emotions. Because here's the thing, we talk about data-driven decision-making. That's actually not how we make decisions. We make it using emotions. So that's why the name of my upcoming book is Story-Driven Data, because humans use emotions to make decisions, and they use data to substantiate or support them. So when we learn to understand our audience as human beings who have emotions, that's when we get them to care.
Cool, that's great. And I'm just looking on.
Thanks for all the love, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we've got one attendee that's raised their hand, so I'm going to try and promote them to the stage so they can ask a question. Oops, gosh, there's quite a few attendees here. It doesn't let me filter for raised hand. Oh, there we go. Allowed to talk. So you, Sarah, if I've pronounced that correctly, if you could ask your question verbally. So if not, post it in chat.
Could I answer one that I saw earlier?
Sure.
That I saw a recurring theme around dashboards and data stories. I'd love to address that quickly, if that's useful.
Yep.
So a lot of people ask me, well, how do I tell a story in a dashboard? And my answer is, you don't. A dashboard is not a vehicle for telling a story using kind of the arc and the journey that I just described. If you think about a dashboard is designed so that when you get in your car, you can look at a single glance and see the vital systems of your car and understand, can you make simple decisions on your own? Or do you need to take it to a mechanic? And that for me is what a dashboard is, really a well-designed dashboard is. It's a single view that allows you to get the vital systems of your business and say, I got this and I'm able to make this decision. Or, oh, what's going on here? Can you look into this more deeply? And that can trigger a deeper analysis and presentation and story. So I see them as very different vehicles. When we try to tell stories on dashboards, it generally doesn't work because they're just not built to do that. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. All the bedtime stories I read to my son.
Cool. All right. I've got to, Aaliyah, thank you so much for doing that talk. That was amazing. And I'm so grateful for you talking for us. I'm just going to take presenter controls for a second. And hopefully you can see my screen. So there's two things to note. So one, so the sort of Wonder Party or the networking lounge, technically it's open throughout the whole of this event. So if you try that bit.ly link, it says bit.ly/GA for lowercase dash wonder. That, and you don't need to sign in and log into that. That takes you to a networking chat. So and there's an insight and storytelling kind of section in there. So if you weren't able to, I don't know, Lee, if you're around for the next 15 minutes or so, or then if you jump over into the Wonder that link and you can then answer people's questions directly. Asara, if you could join the Wonder link and just assist Leah on that. The Wonder only allows a maximum of 5 people in circles, or the event registration bit allows like one to many.